For much of the 19th and 20th centuries, the district of Salmas in northwest Iran was an archdiocese of the Chaldean Catholic Church, now a part of the Chaldean Catholic Archeparchy of Urmia. Early history. In the East Syrian tradition, the martyrdom of the Apostle Bartholomew has traditionally been placed at Salmas, although there were East Syrian Christians in the Salmas district at least as early as the 7th century. Salmas is not heard of as the seat of an East Syrian bishop until 1281, when its bishop Joseph attended the enthronement of Maryaballah III. The church of the village of Chara in the Salmas district was built in 1360 at the expense of Mar Sliba, probably the bishop of Salmas. Interestingly, the name Sliba was taken at the later period by the bishops of Gilu, a district with which Salmas was linked in the 16th century. The Salmas district was inhabited by both Nestorian and Armenian Christians, and around the end of the 13th century had both a Nestorian and an Armenian bishop. During the 15th century, a number of Latin bishops were appointed for Salmas, though they may have been titular bishops only. Only the Nestorian bishopric seems to have survived into the 16th century. Catholic and Nestorian rivalry in the Salmas district. An unnamed bishop of Salmas was one of only 3 remaining Nestorian bishops in 1551. Salmas is listed by Abdasho IV Maron in 1562 as a metropolitan see, with suffragans at Bama, Syabath and Antvastam. Abdasho's letter stated that these and other bishoprics were in Persian territory. The Patriarch Shemon Externa was earlier metropolitan of Salmas, Siirt and Gilu. It is surprising to find these widely separated districts linked, but there is no reason to doubt that the title has been correctly given. It is possible that the metropolitan was responsible for a refugee community from Gilu, apparently living in Persia, rather than for the district of Gilu itself. A metropolitan of Salmas named Joseph was one of the signatories of a letter of 1580 from Shemon Externa to Pope Gregory XIII, and was presumably consecrated by his predecessor shortly after he became patriarch. A metropolitan Joseph of Salmas is also mentioned in the report of 1607. The Bishop Abdasho of Salmas is listed among the hierarchy of Eliaid in the report of 1610, together with the Bishop Isho-Yhb of the land of Persia, dependent on the Patriarch Shemon X. Isho-Yhb, Archbishop of Persia, was one of the bishops addressed in a letter of Peter Strozza of 1614, and may have been a bishop of Salmas, as the name later became traditional. A Catholic bishop named Abraham, styled Episcopus Vedenforst, possibly bishop of Salmas, was present at the Synod of Amid in 1615. The Salmas district came under strong Chaldean influence at the end of the 16th and the first half of the 17th century, when Salmas was the seat of the patriarchs Shemon Externa and Shemon X. According to Fi Shemon Shi, Shemon 12 and Shemon 13 Dena also spent most of the time at Salmas. It is difficult to determine the episcopal succession in the Diocese of Salmas in the late 17th and 18th centuries. According to TFI and G, Salmas returned to Nestorianism between 1640 and 1710, and the Catholic metropolitans of Salmas between 1709 and 1833 were Isho-Yhb Shemon and Isho-Yhb Johann Gabriel. Fi accepted the dates for the first of these metropolitans, added another metropolitan before Isho-Yhb Shemon, also named Isho-Yhb, who died in 1777, and correctly gave the date of Isho-Yhb Shemon's death as 1789. A number of references in manuscript colophons and other sources enable Fee's account to be supplemented. A metropolitan of Salmas named Isho-Yhb from Khosrowa is mentioned together with the Patriarch Shemon 13 Dena in the dating formulas of manuscripts of 1667, 1678 and 1686. As Shemon 13 politely rebuffed an approach from the Vatican in 1670, it is likely that Isho-Yhb was a Nestorian bishop, and should be distinguished from a Catholic bishop of the same name attested in 1709. According to Tafigi, the Nestorians of Persia wrote to the Amid Patriarch Joseph II in 1709 to assure him of their adherence to the Catholic faith and the dependence on the leadership of Mar Isho-Yhb, a Catholic bishop of Salmas. This Mar Isho-Yhb appears to have been given the reign dates 1709 to 52 by Tafigi and Fee because a metropolitan of the same name fled on account of the destruction of his diocese by Osbeg to the village of Sadhu near Sirt in 1751, where he long remained. Isho-Yhb's flight to the Chaldean village of Sadhu strongly suggests that he was a Catholic bishop dependent on Joseph III, and it is therefore probable that the two men should be identified. A metropolitan of Salmas named Abdisho, mentioned neither by Tafigi nor Fee, was the scribe of a manuscript of 1716, and in 1734 Khidr of Mosul referred to an unnamed metropolitan of Salmas and also to a bishop Abdisho of an unnamed see in the Urmia district, possibly Salmas. If the Catholic bishop Isho-Yhb was metropolitan of Salmas between 1709 and 1751, Abdisho was presumably a Nestorian bishop dependent on the Patriarch Shemon 14 Shliman. Catholicism was brought to Khosrowa in the 18th century, according to an account quoted by Hornus, by a youth named Ephraim from Amid, who was later ordained a priest, and whose autobiography was preserved in the cathedral at Khosrowa until it was destroyed in the First World War. The decisive shift to Catholicism seems to have been made in the last quarter of the 18th century, thanks to the efforts of the Metropolitan Isho-Yhb Shemon, who entered into communion with the Catholic Joseph Line at Amid, bringing with him the majority of the East Syrians of the region. During his reign he resided at Khosrowa. According to his tombstone in the cemetery of Khosrowa, he died on the 10th of April 1789 and his father's name was Gawagas. His epitaph stated that he preached and spread the faith of the Church of Rome in the country of the Persians of Adarbagan, bishops of the Chaldean archdiocese of Salmas. Isho-Yhb Shemon was succeeded as Metropolitan of Salmas in 1795 by Isho-Yhb Isha Yohanan Gabriel, who was consecrated a bishop at Baghdad on the 8th of November 1795 by Yohanan Hormizd. His appointment was resisted by a party in the Salmas district, who wanted as the bishop the priest Isaac, a nephew of the late Metropolitan Isho-Yhb Shemon. They sent Isaac to the Nestorian Patriarch Shemon 16 Yohanan, who consecrated him bishop of Salmas at Quds-Harnes, giving him the name Isho-Yhb Melchizedek. Eventually, following an approach by Yohanan Hormizd to the Persian authorities, Isho-Yhb Gabriel was able to assert his authority and administer his diocese without opposition. Yohanan Gabriel died on the 15th of July 1833. During the last years of his reign the Chaldean bishop Peter Shores, ordained for Sirt in 1801, resided in the Salmas district, where he died in 1831. Gabriel's successor was his old rival Isho-Yhb Melchizedek. possibly because of the affection in which he had been held by many of the Chaldeans of Salmas. The Chaldean authorities felt it worthwhile to win him over, and he was consecrated Metropolitan of Salmas by Johannes Hormeest in 1833, remaining in office until his death on the 23rd of August 1859. According to the epitaph on his tombstone in the cemetery of Khosrow, he was the son of Ishoyhb Shemon's brother the priest Isaac, who died in 1800, and was styled Metropolitan of Salmas and administrator of Adarbagan, possibly because of his previous association with the Nestorian Patriarch, but principally because he was already elderly. Melchizedek was given assistance in his episcopal duties. The future Patriarch Nicholas Zayed, an outstanding pupil of the College of the Propaganda, was consecrated Bishop of Adarbagan and coadjutor bishop with the right of succession in 1836 by Johannes Hormeest. In practice he ran the affairs of the diocese. Schiele met him in Dilmun in 1836, and mentioned that he had studied at the College of the Propaganda for 15 years. After Nicholas Zayed became Patriarch in 1839, Melchizedek seems to have been left temporarily without supervision, but a second coadjutor, Guagus Augustin Barshina, was consecrated for the diocese in 1848. He was born in Khosrow in 1814 and educated at the College of the Propaganda, and was ordained a priest in Rome in 1841, taking the name Guagus. He was consecrated for Salmas on the 11th of July 1848 by the Patriarch Joseph VI Ordo, taking the name Augustine. After Melchizedek's death in 1859, he succeeded him as Metropolitan of Salmas, remaining in office until his death in 1889. He was succeeded in 1894 by Isaac Yabor Archeparchy, who was born on the 18th of October 1859 in Khosrow, educated at the College of the Propaganda, and ordained a priest on the 28th of February 1887. While a priest, he attracted attention during the Salmas dispute of 1894 over the ownership of a number of churches in the district, which embroiled the Nestorian and Chaldean churches, the Catholic, Anglican and American missionaries, and the consular representatives of France and Britain. He attended the Synod of Alcosh in October 1894 as Bishop Designate of Salmas, and was consecrated together with Joseph Elia Koyat, Bishop Designate of Ahmadiyya, by Yohanan Elia Melis on the 11th of November 1894. After at least one other brush with the law, he resigned in 1908 and retired to Cairo, where he subsequently became patriarchal vicar of its Chaldean community. Isaac was succeeded in 1910 by Peter Aziz, who was born in Mosul on 6 April 1866, educated at the College of the Propaganda, and ordained a priest in 1890. Between 1894 and 1897 he was director of the Patriarchal Seminary at Mosul, and between 1897 and 1910 Chorepiscopus and Patriarchal Vicar for the Chaldean community of Aleppo. He was chosen for Salmas on 25 January 1910, and consecrated at Mosul by the Patriarch Emmanuel II Thomas on 15 August 1910. In 1918 he assisted at the funeral of the murdered Nestorian Patriarch Shemon 19 Benjamin. He was transferred to the Diocese of Zakho in 1928. After his departure, the Chaldean Diocese of Urmia, vacant since the end of the First World War, became a metropolitan see, and was united with the See of Salmas in 1930. The first metropolitan of the new see was Isaac Yabor Archeparchy, back from Cairo, who died in 1940. His successors were Abel Zayed, Samuel Shores and Thomas Mayram. topographical survey. The Salmas district, at least as early as the 13th century, was inhabited by both Armenian and East Syrian Christians, with the Armenians preponderating. A large number of Armenians emigrated in 1828, and by the middle of the 19th century the community was losing its former dominance. The village of Gulizan, for example, was originally an Armenian village, but was deserted early in the 19th century and by 1855 had been taken over by Chaldean Christians, who used its old Armenian church. On the eve of the First World War the two communities were roughly the same size. In 1913, the East Syrian Christians of the Salmas district, mostly Chaldeans, numbered just over 10,000 and lived in 12 villages. In 1908 there were about 10,000 Armenians living in 23 villages. The main Armenian village in the district was Haftwan, which also had a Chaldean community. The Chaldean archdiocese of Salmas had a population of 150 families in 1850, 2,000 Chaldeans in 1854, 8,000 Chaldeans in 1867, 10,000 Chaldeans in 1896, and 10,460 Chaldeans, with 24 priests and 12 churches, in 1913. Although Ula is listed as a Chaldean village in 1913, at a slightly earlier period most of its villages were loyal to the Quds Khanis patriarchs, and as an isolated traditionalist bastion in the Salmas district in the 19th century was known as the Faithful Village by East Syrian sympathizers in the Urmia region. Because of its geographical proximity, the Chaldean diocese of Salmas also included the village of Gawilan, in the extreme north of the Anzal district, which had a significant Catholic community. Chaldean communities in the Archdiocese of Salmas, 1913. Ul Barber, in a recently published bilingual book, mentions several other villages in the Salmas district with East Syrian populations: Balarua, Karilan, Kolamar, Konishar, Khoisan and Malam. Barber's Kolamar is perhaps to be identified with Tafaji's Kulavar. The map The Assyrians of Iran, produced by the Assyrian community in the United States and presumably based on community memory, also lists the villages of Vargarishmi, Arawan, Aktakana, Kalashan, Panjuko, Sora and Urashanlui. Some of these villages are not mentioned in any other source.